The courtroom hummed that morning, low murmurs of gossip threading through the stale air. Each bench was filled, neighbors, journalists, even some of the HOA members with notepads, as if it were the trial of a lifetime. I could sense Karen Whitfield's confidence wafting over from across the aisle like cheap cologne. She sat poised in her immaculate navy power suit, pearls gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, lips pursed in that same smug little smirk I'd come to know too well. Her chin was high, her whisper to her lawyer low and condescending, like the verdict had already been carved in stone. She was the queen of Willow Estates, the HOA president who believed she could steamroll her way past anyone foolish enough to get in her path. At least, that's what she thought, until Judge Morrison strode into the room and opened the proceedings. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge started, nodding in my direction down the table. "Are you represented by counsel today?" I stood up gradually, realigning my tie with careful calm. "Your Honor," I replied, my voice firm, "I'll be acting for myself." A muted whisper ran through the courtroom. Karen's attorney, a young, cocky guy by the name of Bradley Cooper, new suit, new shoes, and the smirky kind of smile only inexperience makes possible, released a tiny smirk, as if he'd just been given a free victory. This kid didn't stand a chance. He had no notion the tempest he had entered. "Very well," Judge Morrison replied, cocking his eyebrow. "Please recite your qualifications for the record." I swallowed hard, set my palms on the tabletop, and said calmly, "Thomas Mitchell, former attorney, 35 years at Mitchell & Associates. Handled property law and civil litigation. Member of the State Bar since 1987. Cooper's smile died on the spot. Karen's jaw fell, really fell, before she caught herself. 5 seconds of quiet hung in the courtroom like a stretched bowstring. And then, quietly, I sat down. For 30 years, my existence had been the antithesis of this circus. 35 years of corporate warfare and courtroom combat, and I retired to Cedar Ridge Ranch, 100 acres of open horizon, grazing horses, and holy silence. It had previously been owned by the Hendersons 3 generations before I acquired it. Old Jim Henderson, God rest his soul, made it absolutely plain at the time of sale. This property had never been subject to any homeowners association. That was the draw. No regulations, no inquisitive neighbors, nobody dictating what color to paint my barn or the height of my fence. The closest subdivision, Willow Estates, was 2 miles from me, divided by county property and my boundary. It was paradise for that first year. Morning rides, sunsets late, quiet. Then Karen Whitfield became HOA president. Our first meeting was on a chilly October morning. I was fixing a portion of fence when a white Lexus SUV pulled up beside my gate. Out stepped a woman in her 50s, designer sunglasses, highlighted hair, clipboard clutched like a badge of office. "Excuse me," she called, in the commanding tone of someone who'd never been told no. "I need to speak with you about community trail access." I set down my hammer, walked over, and kept the gate between us. "Can I help you? I'm Karen Whitfield, president of the Willow Estates HOA. She pronouned it as if it was supposed to mean something. "We're adding a new community trail system and must create an easement through your property in order to connect to the county's hiking trail." I almost laughed. "Ma'am, this is private property, not in your HOA. Her smile hardened. "Well, that's what we need to talk about. The neighborhood thinks that connected trails will raise property values and encourage healthy living. That's great for your neighborhood," I said calmly. "But this ranch isn't Willow Estates. Never was." She set her face. She tapped her clipboard with a polished nail. "Mr. Mitchell, I don't think you grasp the way these things are done. When something is for the greater good, individual holdouts can't simply stand in the way of progress." That's when I realized this lady was going to be trouble. "Ma'am," I said softly, "I completely understand. The answer is no. Have a nice day." She bristled, turned on her heel, and closed her Lexus door with a bang that sent the gravel bouncing. The next 6 months were a gradual slide into insanity. First were the letters, formal documents printed on HOA letterhead asking for my presence at board meetings I wasn't required by law to attend. Then there were the anonymous county complaints of non-existent code violations, and I was forced to spend afternoons with inspectors who shook their heads and left. Then there were the community walks. Willow Brook residents would have groups show up on my property line and take pictures, pointing, whispering like I was some kind of animal in a zoo behind glass. It was harassment with a smile. The April breaking point came when I pulled into my back gate to see the padlock cut cleanly in half and tire tracks leading into my property. Someone had pounded bright orange trail markers in my trees. That someone was photographed. At 2 a.m., my fresh security footage caught Karen herself, tracksuit, flashlight, and bolt cutters striding up to my gate as if she owned it. 2 other board members trailed behind her, driving in trail markers and giggling. I had a welding crew put in a steel gate with concrete reinforced posts by morning. Then I had my lawyer mail them a cease and desist letter. Her response? A lawsuit. It came on a Friday afternoon, delivered in person by a fidgety process server. Karen Whitfield and the Willowbrook Estates HOA were suing me for malicious obstruction of community resources, interference with established easements, and, my personal favorite, creating a public nuisance. They ordered me to take down all barriers to access, pay $50,000 in damages, and reimburse their legal fees. I read it twice, wondering whether to laugh or grab a drink. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen. Her attorney trotted out every argument he could muster. Assertions of historical access, implied easements, even the notion that my ranch had originally been part of the subdivision. All rubbish. But rubbish had to be squashed thoroughly. So, I pulled out my bar license. No use letting some other person get paid for a fight I can win in my sleep. I had filed my counterclaim against trespassing, harassment, and slander. And this is how we arrived here, this Tuesday morning court battle. Karen sauntered in like she owned the joint, accompanied by her entourage, her attorney, 2 HOA board members, and somebody furiously writing for their neighborhood newsletter. She even sported her HOA lapel pin, as if it carried actual authority. Judge Morrison, a tough no-nonsense woman in her early 60s, entered and sat down. I'd dealt with her numerous times before my retirement, and as I said my name, I noticed the glimmer of familiarity in her eyes. "Mr. Mitchell," she said with a small smile, "welcome back." Karen's attorney jumped to his feet for his opening remarks, which were laced with bravado. He made me sound like an antisocial hermit denying innocent families the right to appreciate nature. He talked of decades of neighborhood access, of holding the whole neighborhood hostage. When my turn came, I remained unruffled and spoke without drama. "Your Honor, I present to you the original deed of 1952, the recorded survey of my purchase in 2021, and affidavit testimony from the last 3 owners, spanning over 6 decades. Never has an easement ever been on this land. It has never been owned by any HOA. I put each paper on the table one at a time. Cooper's grin withered. Then I pushed a manila folder in his direction. I also have security video of Ms. Whitfield trespassing on my property no fewer than 6 times, cutting chains, driving through my gates, and placing unauthorized trail markers. Judge Morrison arched an eyebrow as she shuffled through the photographs. "Ms. Whitfield," she asked, holding up one of the stills, "is that you?" Karen turned bright red. "That's taken out of context," she flashed. "The community needed those trails." "So you're admitting to trespassing?" the judge pushed. Her attorney intervened. "Your Honor, my client had good faith belief that easements were already in place." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Your Honor," I stated, Defense Exhibit C. I waved a flash drive around. An audio recording between Ms. Whitfield and another board member. In her own words, "I don't care if he owns it. I'll make his life hell until he gives in." The courtroom erupted into silence. Karen gasped. "That was a private conversation, recorded from my property," I replied matter-of-factly. "Your voice traveled over my fence. Single-party consent state, entirely legal." The judge settled back. "Counselor, do you have proof of an easement?" Cooper rustled papers hopelessly. "We're still going through historical records, Your Honor." "So that's a no," Judge Morrison stated bluntly. She addressed me. "Mr. Mitchell, do you want to continue with your counterclaims?" "Yes," Your Honor. I want damages for trespass, payment of court costs, and a permanent restraining order prohibiting Ms. Whitfield or any HOA member from accessing my property. Karen jumped up from her seat. You can't do that. I'm the HOA President. Have a seat, Ms. Whitfield, the judge snapped, cracking his gavel like thunder. Or I'll hold you in contempt. For 20 more minutes, Judge Morrison tore apart every aspect of her case. No evidence, no legal basis, no moral high ground. By the end, the decision was cruel. Each of Karen's claims dismissed with prejudice. My counterclaims granted in full. $15,000 in damages, $5,000 in fees, and a permanent restraining order keeping her 500 feet from my property. Then the judge added, almost as an afterthought, I'll also be forwarding this to the district attorney's office for potential criminal trespass charges. Karen's face went pale. I was only trying to help the community, she cried. No, the judge said coldly. You were attempting to bully someone into submission. With the fall of the gavel, it was done. I departed from the courtroom hearing the murmurs, outraged board members, emergency meetings, resignation letters, and votes of no confidence. Cooper stayed away from her altogether. 3 days later, I got a certified mail letter. The Willow Estates HOA had voted unanimously to oust Karen Whitfield from office and forever bar her from leadership. The district attorney filed charges. 2 months later, Karen pleaded guilty to misdemeanor trespassing, 12 months probation, 500 hours community service, and forbidden to ever have anything to do with an HOA. 6 months thereafter, the state law school asked me to deliver a keynote speech entitled When Karen Attacks, a case study in HOA overreach. I utilized our case, videos, transcripts, photographs as the focal point. The speech went viral. Karen Whitfield's legacy wasn't the connected trail system she envisioned. It was a legal warning to all new law students regarding the pitfalls of power, ego, and underestimating the wrong person. I heard later that she'd sold her home at a huge loss and relocated out of state. The new HOA board formally apologized to me and, in a funny gesture, included a fruit basket. And as for the $20,000 she paid me, I gave every cent to a legal aid organization that assists homeowners in combating abusive HOAs. They called their new conference room the Whitfield Warning Room. The irony was not lost on anyone. And that, my friends, is the way one determined HOA president learned the hard way. Some gates don't open simply because you insist they do. This is Neighbor Wars HQ, where justice meets entitlement, one tale at a time.